Buenos dias, Gunners Collective TV. Back at it? You already know. Like a torta with some bad habits. Bye, yap. Bye, yap. Let's get straight to that intro while I'm bye, yapping. Welcome back to the channel. And if you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, make sure you go ahead and do that. Put your notification bell on all so that way you're directed in the direction of the dope content that I stay kicking. And I appreciate the support, man. You see how I did that? I just slowed it down. I'm very humbled by it. Let's go, man. It's like a domestic issue, kicking the door in and shit. I'm here. Let's go, right? So I get asked a lot of questions, and one of the questions I get asked quite frequently is, who is more militant? The Nortenos or the Surenos, the Southsiders, right? Who is it? What is it, right? What group carries himself with more professionalism, is really activated behind them walls, is more dangerous, treacherous, and more militant? Now, for those of you that don't know the definition on the word militant, I don't either, but I know it means military, right? Militant, who's really about the business, who's more structured, who programs harder, who's more secure, whose security is more up to par, right? You know me. I don't like to disrespect anyone. I like to just keep it real when it comes to the facts. The facts are this, right? The Norteño movement has always been looked at by outside entities as the more militant group. Why? Because in less numbers, things seem more structured. See, when you have thousands of members behind them walls, when you have hundreds, literally hundreds of Southerners on a yard, it looks more in disarray, not as poised, not as strong of a security presence, not as strong as a militant group. Meaning when they work out, they're fragmented into different groups because they can't all come together unless they're in the back, unless they're in the oil, administrative segregation. Then you see the Southerners prowess, you see the Southerners getting together and working out. But besides that, on the prison yards and even on the streets, the Southerners, because of their numbers, seem less militant than the Norteños. Now, the Norteño founding fathers, the originators of the Norteño movement, or the organization that controls the Norteño movement, right, are all based off of individuals that were once in Vietnam, have a military background, or are very militant in their ways of thinking because they were around dudes who do come from that military background, right? So in doing so, in the constitution of the Norteños, there was a lot of wording that was implemented into working out, bettering oneself, bettering one's mind, learning different aspects of the game, so that way you could establish and control a yard, right? So in doing so, Norteños have always moved as one máquina, one machine. You know, if there's one screw loose, the machine will break down. So usually that screw is stabbed 100 times and thrown off the tier, and then the machine keeps going, right? There's no tolerance in the Norteño movement for any bad apples. There's no tolerance for bandito acts or cowardice. There's no tolerance for talking behind each other's backs or putting hands or laying hands on each other. That is considered red on red. That is considered a bandito act. That is considered what Gunner did, right? So you just can't do that, and that's just the facts. As far as the more militant group, both of these gangs and groups are as militant as they come. They both are reserved to their ways of thinking. They both have a very heavy raza influence when it comes to their group, meaning at the end of the day, the word raza is utilized and used within these two groups pretty predominantly, even though there's members of the organizations and groups that are black, that are white, that come from different cultures. You know, when you talk about your ethnicity, you could be black, white, green, yellow, but it's where you're from and where you're at all at the same time, mixed in one, right? You don't have to be brown to have a brown philosophy. You don't have to be black to have a black philosophy. You know, you could be like the white guy, black label, and have the black philosophy and be a wood, right? I mean, at the end of the day, that the color of your skin is not what makes the difference. It's your idealisms, the way you think, right? As far as more militant, I being an ex-Norteño can tell you that It was very structured, even to the point that I seen a lot of Norteños breaking under the pressure of just how secure it was and how the focus was on security. I remember going to yards and not even being able to play handball or being able to work out properly or being able to fraternize with other homies and chill, right? It was always a continual thing of counting, doing a cuenta, making sure you get back and write your off-tier reports, making sure that the yard was secured so you could be on the yard. And in doing so, a lot of us were overlooking the obvious, that people were laughing at us for doing too much. But in the end, that safety security measures and the politics we were up under were actually a good thing. And there are, people talk about prison politics. I try not to elaborate too much on the exact politics of certain groups because that's just not my business. But I'll tell you this. If those politics and policies and constitutions and all that, reglas, were not established, then you would have weaker groups. You would have people that would take advantage of your group because they would sense and see weakness. Okay. As far as more militant, both groups are down. With the Norteños, it could be 2, 3, 4, 5 of them on the yard, and they will have to hold it down no matter what. Regardless if the opposition's at hundreds, it doesn't matter, man. Hey, if you're a true believer, a firm believer in your cause, then you're going to hold it down regardless of the scrapes that you're going to get. And you're going to get scraped. It's going to happen. And how do I know this, right? How is my mindset militant? I cared about the Norteño movement above all else. I dedicated myself to that with the true belief that there was victory to be had in ese, right? Knowing deep down inside that the Southerners posed a great opposition. There was a lot of them in comparison to us, but that because we were so tight with the way we thought about our things and the way we moved, that we could overcome those barriers of numbers, right? I was disillusioned. I was wrong, right? But it didn't mean that the Norteño cause is bad. It's actually a cause that loves and shows you love if you show it love, right? As far as being militant, the workouts, the way you're broken up into regiments, the way you're told and taught, and the security that's implemented is very above and beyond militant. Like I said, that's why so many Norteños fall off, back up, get rolled up, removed, because they're not able to handle just how treacherous it could be if you go against the grain and just how much hard work it is to even be a Norteño. There's a lot of hardship. That's why it's called the struggle. There's a lot of hardship within that group. Now, as far as the Southerners, they have a lot of hardships too, but it's a different type of hardship, right? They are also very militant. They come from an organization or are up under an organization where, you have to be arrogant, dominant, and be about your business at all points in time. That's why when you see Southerners on the yard, Southsiders, Surenos, right? They're always clean. Their philosophies are, you are on the outside what you are on the inside. They are going to show, they're a show of force. They have numbers. They're always, moving viciously and violently, laying demos down, right? The Southsiders are definitely not going to take disrespect at all. Same thing with Norteños, not at all. You got to include the Woods as well, brother. They're also a very militant group, right? Maybe a little bit more looser when it comes to the way they interact amongst each other, but they're also militant in the way they work out and their security measures and being ready and prepared at all times for war. And that's what militant kind of means behind the walls, right? A group that's up to par and ready and carries themselves like the military, okay? Carries themselves militant, moving as a unit, being ready at all times. And I'll say Norteños are forced to. They have no choice because of the numbers, because being the minority in prison, man, means something, and having to establish them yards, or else you have no choice but to roll with the program and be a part of the program. Believe me, the program is bigger than everybody. There is no defecting from it. There's no deciding you're not going to work out that day. There is no saying, hey, I'm going to go get high on the yard and I'm not going to do my burpees. That right there is disrespect for the cause, and it's a violation of the standards of a Norteño's living, and you will be eradicated from the movement immediately. No questions asked. I get a lot of questions about DP, and I've seen Nortenos online being made fun of. Oh man, you know, when it comes to the Southerners, their DPs are chequeadas or regulations, are knife play, or someone getting smashed, you know. And then if that person survives, God bless them if they do, then they're able to come back within the fold and function, right? With the Norteños, when you're DP'd, it's more of a mind thing, right? It could be physical or it could be mental, because physical does affect the mental and vice versa. So it's more of writing an essay, understanding what you did wrong to put you in the position to be DP'd. And so that way, by writing an essay, you put it on paper and you get a better understanding. And the maestro that's teaching you gets a better understanding of your ways of thinking, to understand if you're willing and you're still dedicated to the cause like you should be. When it comes to the physical, man, hey, if they could take it out on your body, if it increases and helps you in the process, so be it, right? And you tear them down to build them up. Steel sharpens steel. That's the philosophy there, right? So it's a militant way of thinking. It's always positive. You could turn a negative into a positive. It's always, we got to go out there. We got to handle business. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it swiftly, cleanly, try to get away with it and handle our business and let everyone know, man, this is how we move. So when it comes to who's the more militant group, without picking sides, I would say the Norteños are. And I would say that's due just to the numbers and to they have to be. Okay? With Southsiders, there's so many of them. You know, you got to understand, in the Southern movement, a lot of it is dedication. You know, not everyone's a Sureño. There's a big difference from a Southsider, a resident, and a Sureño, right? A Sureño is someone who has dedicated himself to his cause, who has raised his hand, who is willing to be involved in the politics, who is willing to go out there and establish yards, who is willing to be in the mix, who thrives off of that, who wants to do that. You are not obligated in the as a Southerner to become a Sureño. You could actually do your time. Now, if something cracks off that involves all the Southsiders, yes, absolutely, you will be accounted for, because no bed space is free in prison, especially in the California system, right? So yes, you will not even be asked, but you will be obligated to be with the program. Same thing goes for the residents, people that you're not just going to kick in and bust a spread with the Southsider and Sureño and not get in the mix when it's time. With the Norteños, there's no questions asked. Everybody must perform to the utmost of your capabilities, or else. And that or else could be 100 stab wounds. That's serious business, right? So, and the same thing goes with the Southerners. If you do not participate or you fuck up, you know, that chequeada, that regulation could be it. And it usually is, right? Being on those prison yards, I think the most removals I ever seen were done by Southsiders. It's because they got more numbers, and it's because they didn't play. Okay, they did not play. They were always inner fighting. There was always, you know, dudes coming from the back, changing the program. It was always some drama or something within their movement that you could see from a distance. With the Norteños, there's no choice but to be on the same page. If a bandito comes in and tries to regulate the yard and take over, and he'll probably be dealt with pretty quick, right? Or, you know, the yard's gonna fucking flip, because the Norteños are gonna start fucking politicking amongst their own as well. It's gonna get ugly. So to answer the question, who's the more militant group? I'd say the Norteños. But I wanted to talk about a removal that I seen that was so fucking militant. It was done by Southerners. Made me rethink that, right? I was like, wow, I didn't know these guys moved like that. And you always think that the enemies are not up to par. They're not as hard as you are, you know. It's just in any gang, any group, in life, in general, even at work, right? And no one can fuck with you. You're number one. You and yours are number one, and our football team's number one, our baseball team's number one, our croquet team is number one, right? My fucking honey buns taste better than yours are. Oh, you got yours off Union Supply, I got mine off Walking Horse, bitch, right? There's always just that trying to one up everyone. Now you can't leave, right? It's just always that you're better than everyone else. But this day in particular, I was going to find out that we weren't as up to par as they were, right? And so what had happened was there was a Southsider that came out of the oil. Now he had been whacked. He had been hit on a couple of different yards, right? But the dude kept coming back. Right now, we were unaware as Norteños, we were unaware of their business. We didn't know who this was that came out the back, but you could tell as soon as he came out, there was meetings being had. This guy, pretty tatted back, pretty big dude, brosh, all that. You could tell he was somebody at some point in time. Now, he never was one of the big fellas, but he was close, in association with people, right? And so whatever he did, and I never found out what he did to fuck up, it was pretty bad. It was bad enough that he had already been hit off 2 yards. And you would think someone like that would check in, or that administration would, conveniently put them on an S&Y yard or PC them up. But that's not the way it was back then. The way it was is you needed to ask for protection. You needed to ask the gang coordinator or the officer in charge or the sergeant to be housed in segregation away from your group, right? You needed to fall off. But it wasn't like that with this guy. This guy felt wholeheartedly, I guess, that what he did, he could get backs. Maybe he was being told that, or that his status that he once had because he was a mesero, and for those that know what that means, they know what that means. I'm not going to explain it. It's not my room to explain it, but he was a mesero at some point in time in a different prison. And, I believe that could have been what led to his demise. But anyways, he gets whacked. He lives. He goes to a different yard in New Folsom. They hit him right there. He goes to the oil, and now he ends up with us in Corcoran, right? And I remember at this particular time, I was thinking to myself, like, damn, man. Once I was told, like, hey, this dude, there might be problems with this dude. And I was thinking immediately, I thought North and South issues. And I was like, damn, it's cool right here. It ain't really, but it wasn't. It was within their own people. And I seen the way these guys started moving and the way this fucking hit went down. And again, he survived it. But the way it went, he was a big dude. The way it went down, as coordinated as it was, and I seen it all in HD, right? I was like, damn, these motherfuckers move like us. It spooked me. That was the first time I realized, I never thought Southerners were punks. I never thought that they were scary. I never thought any of that. Never. I was in Nellis, man, getting manhandled. I was in Nellis, man. These motherfuckers was hitting me with battery packs, knives, all that. I'm going to be doing a video on CYA tomorrow, man. I think I'm going to break it down to you guys just how I felt for reals, man. No more sugar coating or added preservatives. I'm going to let you guys know the real. Okay, it's time. It's finally time, right? Tell you guys how I felt in real life. But these dudes, they were moving in groups and just boom, boom, boom. Like they kept this dude where he was comfortable, where a couple dudes were talking to him, then a couple other dudes were moving to play, and they would back off, then a couple dudes were moving to play. I mean, it was very militant the way they did it. And when they finally got him into the position where they wanted him, boom, 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 the hitters came out on him. Thing was, he was big and he ran for dear life, right? Cops were on this shit. They already knew what time it was, and they were able to close the situation before it got escalated into death. But I'll tell you right now, it's different now. If that was to happen nowadays, cops would just be like, fuck it. The California model. It is what it is. But back then, the cops were no warning shots, right? They'll blow your whole leg off. So he was able to escape it. But it was just the way that they moved, how coordinated it was. And it started all the way from the building. They were on him from the building. They were shadowing him from the building. And up until that point, I had never seen Southerners do that. Usually Southsiders would come out the building. They have a little meeting at their little tables. They already know what they're going to do. The wheel had been passed around, and then they just, boom, they move, right? Someone walks by, and then, boom, they take flight. They move on the track. But in this particular situation, they were like, it was like very militant. And that's when I got to understand it. Like, they're just like us. And then I got to thinking later on, after I was no longer in the game and I was in the oil, and I was like, the way they sounded out their cadence and the way they worked out, and I would see them, from my cell out the window, Southerners were doing it just like Northerners, if not even rougher, right? So when I'm asked who's the more militant group, I will say the Nortenos, just because I lived it, and it's hard for anyone to change my mind on it, because there's a lot of things I can't explain to you, nor will I explain to you on that goes on behind the scenes that makes it the more militant group. But the Southsiders are definitely right there, man. They're definitely right there, if not one up, to tell you the truth, right? And it just depends. It all depends on the yards that you're on with the Southerners. They're deeper on certain yards. They got shit going on. They're not really too heavy on security. And you don't think they're watching, but they know what's up. They know what's up, right? And with Nortenos, there's just so much structure. That's the mindset. It's always the structure part of it. It's always the programming all the time, 24/7, and every Norteno will be held accountable. So everyone's on the same, no Norteno is bigger than the program or bigger than each other. They're all in the same fucking, working hand in hand and on the same page in the same book, and so, all Nortenos are functioning up under the bonds. So they're all functioning up under the same rules. And no matter who, how much status you have or how much status you don't, day one or day 100, you know what I mean? It's the same thing. So to me, you guys can let me know in the comments who you think is the more militant group. I respect both groups. Both groups are very dangerous. Both groups ain't fucking around, especially behind them walls. They'll handle business, right? As you know, there's an end of hostilities, and you see these two groups working together behind the walls to eradicate anyone that poses a threat to their yards that they've established. So with that being said, there's a respect factor there, right? If there wasn't, you would know it. So, you know, all these dudes that whiff on the internet, this north and south shit back and forth, and this disrespect of each other, man. You know, until you function behind the walls, shoulder to shoulder with your enemy, then you will truly find out just how militant they are. So let me know what you guys think. With that being said, thumbs up or thumbs down. Heavy's going to be the head that wears the crown. I'm going to continue to strive, struggle, and strive for what I truly believe in. That's the betterment of all people. This video is sponsored by Barrio Liquors in Turlock, California. If you pull up to the barrio, tell Lali I said, what's up, man? Out there in Turlock, make sure you pull up, man. Go get you something to drink. Also by Sticks and Stones Yard Service in Tucson, Arizona. If you live in the Tucson area and you need some yard work done, man, hey, hit up Sticks and Stones. He's got you covered like a state blanket. Itchy, better warm. Menudo.